Hello, everyone. Paulette Henson here. Welcome to the Author's Lounge. And I am super excited to bring on to the Author's Lounge author Hector Coleman. Hector, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Welcome to the Author's Lounge. Thank you. Thank you. Here on the Authors Lounge, we try to get to know our authors and allow them to talk about their writing journey and, all of those details that went into writing the book. There's a lot of people out there that are thinking about writing a book, or they're maybe in the middle, and sometimes they may hear something from you or any of our other authors that will help them, to bring them along with completing their book. So tell us a little bit about who Hector Coleman is and your mission, your book journey, and all of that.
Okay. Yeah, well, again, my name is Hector Coleman. I was born in Chicago, Illinois. I was the seventh child of eight children of a single mother. And the gang violence was so bad that she moved us out of Chicago in a U-Haul van, all of us, into Rochester, New York. And this is where I presently reside to this day. And she moved us because of the gang violence, and she had five sons. But after getting here to
Mm,
Rochester, New York, I was still relatively young and had not experienced a lot of communication and interaction with others because we were always locked up in the house unless you went to school or something. And so
mhm,
Rochester kind of gave me an opportunity to meet other people and get out and kind of develop as a young person. But in that development, there was some character flaws that I was not aware of. And those character flaws eventually led me in onto a course of being addicted to substances or drugs, if you want to use that.
mhm,
And more precise, it was cocaine. And I got addicted to cocaine. It was strictly by accident. I guess,
mhm,
how can that be an accident? Well, it's simple as this. The fact is that someone I thought I was, about to smoke marijuana, and come to find out it was cocaine. And I
mm,
was proud just to admit that, wait a minute, hold up on this here, because I thought, I'm cool. I'm from Chicago. I'm a young guy. I've dabbled before. But this
mhm,
little different because they put it in this glass pipe, and I was too proud to say what the hell is going on. And I went on ahead and
mhm,
did that, and it was like the worst day of my life as I look back on it. And it was a bad experience, but then it ended up being an addictive experience.
mhm,
Addiction,
mhm,
I was so bound and so held by the substance that I was causing me to almost lose everything. And at that point, I decided, well, I have no other choice. I got to get some help with this thing. And I looked up to heaven, and I looked up to God, and I got on my knees, and I cried like a baby. And asked
mm.
God, please do this for me, because I don't know what's happening. I can't stop this. I had tried.
Mhm. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I think we lost Hector. We'll just give him a moment to sign back on. Wow. I was just really getting into his story. So I can't wait till he returns and we can resume. Ladies and gentlemen, the Authors Lounge is a show that I developed to allow authors to talk about their books and to really get into why they wrote their book, as well as to promote their books so that they can get sales. And so, Hector, we're just, if you can hear me, we're just waiting for you to log back in so you can continue your interview. I can hear something. Okay, so we're going to wait and give Hector a moment to log back in. But At any rate, um, that's why I developed the show, and that was to provide this platform so that authors can talk about their books, they can promote their books, they can talk about their writing journey. You just never know what you're going to hear, and it may trigger you to, get your book started. It's very important that you write your story, because you can't say, oh, I don't have a story. Everybody has a story. And so write it down. That's your story, is your legacy. And it gives your grandkids, kids, their kids, and on something to read from you. And so it will always be there and available. And so think of it in that way, that it's something that you can leave your future generation so that they can read about you and read about, whatever it is that you want them to know. And so, with that, we're still waiting for Mr. Hector, because his the intro of his discussion was very interested, and so I can't wait for him to join us again. Hopefully, he's not having any substantial technical issues, but we'll just give him a few more moments now. I think that is Hector coming back on.
Hmm.
All right, Hector, go ahead. So, I was just telling our audience that, I was really getting into your story. So, so happy you were able to join us again. Go
Hmm.
ahead and continue.
Yeah, as I was saying, and it was, being addicted to drugs, and I looked up to God, and I had just recently heard about him and had just accepted him as my Lord and Savior, but I hadn't changed. And in the process of even having to receive Christ, the addiction happened to me because I didn't know him. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know God. But I did
Mm-hmm.
reach up and I reached out to him and I made him a promise, God, if you just get these away from me and take these away from me, I'm going to serve you the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I don't know how it happened, but I ended up in an outpatient, and before you know it, I was clean. And once they released, me back to do what I needed to do for myself, I remembered the promise that I made to God, and with that promise, I set out to fulfill that promise, and that was the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of me writing the Confessions of a Storefront Church, is because after God did so wonderful, He was so wonderful towards me and have kept His word in saying that He would be good to me. I says now it's my time to be good to you. But I didn't envision the pain, the pitfalls, the disappointments, the setbacks, all of those things. I had no idea that would happen. And so in the Confessions of a Storefront Church, it's about a young man who, which was myself, but he fell in love with God basically,
Mm-hmm.
and went out to be one of God's soldiers. And that started out by trying to reach the lost, the least, and those that are hurting the most.
Yeah.
And it was a small, it was a great effort, but the attempt was flawed in many, many ways. And as
Mm-hmm.
I look back on that experience after my church door closed, because I did start a church, and that's where the name come from, the Confessions of a Storefront Church, I realized after that whole experience is that there might be other people out here that has a desire to serve God, have a desire to operate under
Mm-hmm.
His control to help others. And I found in the end
Right.
that faith is just what faith is. It's the hope for things.
Mm-hmm.
It's evidence of things hoped for. And that's what I was
Mm-hmm.
operating on. But the reality is here on earth, mankind and humanity operates on a different level. And
Mm-hmm.
my reason for writing the book is to help those out there that has a desire to be in ministry to not make the same mistakes that I did and probably many other people have made. and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so I think the book is, personally, I really believe that this was a gift from God for me. It was a gift for God to me, because I was raised, as I said, in Chicago. My mom was busy. I never did homework. I never really paid attention in school. And so I pretty much was illiterate. And even when moving to Rochester, New York, I was pretty much illiterate. I was afraid to fill out that job applications or even to write my name for fear that somebody would see almost that I'm being an imposter and I couldn't write. And this was the amazing part about it all, is that one day I was sitting at my computer and I was just thinking about all my experience and how would I process all this information. And a thought came to my mind and it says, I wonder if there's anybody else out there that may have experienced this or similar experiences. And I remember turning to my computer, and one tap at a time, I ended up writing the book. And when I wrote the book was not to have a large success. The book was not intended to, sell millions of dollars. The book was something that I believe that God allowed me to be healed by professing it and sharing it. And so this is my hope, is that this will change the world. It that certainly has a will have a mark on Christianity for those that will dare venture and read what's inside the pages.
Wow. Wow. That's very it's heartfelt because there are a lot of people, as you talk about confessions, a lot of people have those same sort of pathways because there was a huge drug uh, just force that went through a lot of communities during a certain time,
Mhm.
and it was targeted to you know get capture people and pretty much take them out, and so the good news is that you made it through that. There are a lot of people that didn't make it through that, because they didn't have the strength or they didn't have the support or whatever it was. They didn't
Yeah,
make it through, and so I think that it's for everyone's healing, because when you're dealing with somebody that has a drug addiction, it's not that person, it's everybody around them is
yeah,
dealing with a drug addiction, with their family members and that. And so it is something that, one, I applaud you for that, because I know that that was a journey. Like I said, a lot of people don't make it through that, and they fall right back into it. And
mhm,
so writing about it, yes, it's something that people need to hear, because as much as we see that, maybe people aren't doing a certain type of drug anymore, but they're doing more of another one, it's all still there, and there are people that are still today are struggling with those same things that, was from, back in the 80s and 90s. And
yeah.
so it's definitely relevant, and coming from someone who's been there, it just makes it more relatable, where people can really, they know that what you've gone through, and you can relate to them as well. And so, do you provide coaching or any type of or counseling along with your book? Is that something that you do, or as you wrote the book, you weren't thinking about that? Tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts were that on I'm glad you asked that question. My thoughts were is that I wanted to do speaking engagements. I wanted to be there for those small churches that are struggling and feel
Mm-hmm.
lost, or that maybe it was a mistake that they're doing what they're doing, or because there are a lot of people that tell you, no, you ain't the one.
Right.
There's a lot of, our society is built, so therefore you'll run into a lot of obstacles, a lot of people that will oppose you, a lot of people don't believe in you, and so
Right.
it's who you're going to follow. Are you going to follow your heart and follow God, or are you going to listen to other voices? And so
Right.
that's a part of it. But what's even more amazing about all of this is
Mhm.
that once the church was started,
Mhm.
goal was that we would have drug and alcohol abuse support groups, but
Mhm. Mhm.
it never developed, and my
Mm.
ended up closing. And I thought, how is this possible? That someone has a genuine heart to serve, and that
Mm.
someone poured everything that they have, whether it's time, talent, resources, or whatever it was, into it, and now my church door closed.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was really baffled by it. But one thing I learned about God is that God, He has said in His Word that uh, 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 He will never forget you. You
Right.
know,
Mhm.
and with that thought, I'm thinking to myself, no, this is the idea that people have put in people's minds about church, and this is the only way that church needs to happen. And I
Mhm.
following the pattern of others, there are some good things, but there are also some copycat things that we
Mhm.
can't directly connect to scripture.
Right. Right.
And so we have a lot of the churches that simply mimic everybody else, and we know the word never changes, but the whole
Right.
gist of the book is saying that there are hundreds of thousands of people that I believe that have been called by God. And because the system is so flawed in the sense of how we recognize those that are called by God versus those who are placed in the office. And that
Mhm.
because you have a lot of folks that's in office right now that shouldn't be pastoring, but they preach a mean message. But
Mhm.
and then you have a lot of people who sitting at home, and a lot of people who are sitting in the park, and people who are different places all over the world, and God has called them, but because
Mhm.
they haven't measured up to what man's expectations are to be
They're
used
not.
by God, they step
Mhm.
back. Well, apparently it's not for me. And the
Mhm.
book is basically saying that there are so many opportunities to minister, and we have to listen to God and not listen to others. And
Yeah.
um, I believe you, even Miss Henson, you might be that one. You might have that spirit of God in you that is waiting
Mhm.
unleashed, but because you go to those in your church authority, and then you find out, well, you're not. You get in line because they got 30 other people in front of you. They
Right.
dress
Mhm.
better, they look better, they smell better, they give more, they do all these things, and you're sitting there like, but what about the promise between me and God?
Mhm.
Is what the
Yeah.
book is about. And just to kind of wrap this up with what I'm saying is, it is amazing because to this day, well, this is what I do for a living now. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, and I counsel people every day. This is what I
Mhm.
do. I counsel them as individual, and I counsel them in groups. And
Mhm.
this has been the greatest reward for me, because although my heart sunk and hurt because my church closed, I always remember that God doesn't forget. And my hope
Right.
is my ministry will return, because it wasn't
Yeah.
my time. God only
Right.
operates His time. And so I see, after I became a drug and alcohol counselor, because I was insistent that I was going to please God. I
Mhm.
After I got involved and started to learn about that, then I realized, you know what? I wasn't ready, but I believe
Mhm.
now. I
Yeah.
believe that equipped me, and I believe that the Confessions of a Storefront 2 church part 2 is going to be even more dynamic. I think it's going
Mhm.
to insight to help those that have this spiritual unction and this feeling of, I need to do something for God. And they look at the preachers, they look at the church, and they desire, but they feel left out.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's You raised a lot of good points, and I think that that is very true. Something has changed within the church, and there's a disconnect between the mega churches and the small churches. And to your point, for a smaller church and you're trying to do something, or you've been called to do something, and understanding that you are in this world, this economic system, and you are trying to facilitate something that may be outside of your resources.
Yes.
And so it doesn't mean that you need to stop doing what you're doing. It just means that you have to, go back to the drawing board and find a way where you can still do that thing,
Hmm.
and minimize your expenses. Now, what hearing you talk, I think that that's what you're doing with your coaching. Even though you don't have your storefront church,
Hmm.
the people that you counsel and the groups, that's your church. So I think my point is that, um, when you talk about church, the definition of it's not so much the building.
Hmm.
It's the message and the people that you connect with,
Yes.
whether it's two people, one person, 10 or 100. It's that. And so I think that, it's, oh, I think we lost Hector again. Um, Hector, I think we lost your connection. Okay, so we'll wait for Hector to come back. But just on the conversation, um, you never know how you're going to show up. Okay, here's Hector. Okay, so what I was saying is that, when God calls you to do something, how you show up, and who
Hmm.
shows up to support you can't worry about
Hmm.
that. You have to do whatever it is that God called you to do. And God will provide the people and all the resources, everything that you need. Now, sometimes, as human beings, we want other things and we want more. We see, like, not so much copycatting, but we want our thing to be whatever it is that we envision.
Hmm.
But it may not be time for that. And I think that when you experience those setbacks, it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It means that maybe you, like you said, you're not ready, so you have to get to that point where you are ready. And that goes with anything, because I think that no matter where, all walks of life, where you are in your life, you have the opportunity to help somebody, to minister to somebody. You don't know where they are, just because they show up looking a certain way. You don't know what they're going through. And so it's always an opportunity to reach out to people, to connect with people. And I think that, again, with what you're doing, with your coaching, that's your church. Those people, that's your congregation, and as that grows,
Hmm.
that's going to multiply, because you're impacting numbers of people at a time, the same as you would in a physical building. And
Yes.
so I think that that is, you're on a great mission. Your book is only complements the work, that you're doing, and you're showing people with the book, how you can change your situation, you know. And
Yes.
and so I think that that's a great thing. It's a great story. How are you marketing your book, as far as, are you on Amazon? Barnes and Nobles? Are you on all the bookstores there?
Yes, primarily right now it's Amazon and it's Barnes and Noble. Uh,
Okay.
I'm looking to get books into the bookstore. That is the ultimate goal. I'm very proud to say that I will be in a magazine this year about my
Yes.
book. And this is another point I want to make before we go too far along is that the book also looks closely at the healthcare system or the system that we have in place to care for ministers. And what I mean by
Okay.
that is like everybody's for themselves. Everybody
Right.
is king in their own kingdom. And I believe this causes a lot of church doors to close. A lot of great pastors, a lot of great ministers don't have the support, and therefore it's almost like, well, God, did you really call me? Maybe I need to shut this door and just go on. But it's not that, and that's what I'm here today is to support you. I'm here to tell you to keep pressing on
Right.
because may not be today, but it might be tomorrow. Whatever
That's right.
God placed in your heart. And I hate to see it when ministers, you hear ministers that say they used to have a church or they once had a church or I was, but then I had to shut it down. And I went around and asked quite a few people, and I found out there's a whole lot of people out here that desire to minister, but they don't have a church. They don't
Mm,
have a they don't have a crowd. And we
mm,
know neither did Jesus.
right.
But he did what he did despite, and we see what the outcome was. And
Right.
believe that we have to get a system as we look at what's happening in our churches today and the great falling away. There's a great falling away. And it's not all because of the people who attends the church. It's oftentimes because there are people that should be out here not necessarily behind the pulpit, but they should be in the grocery store. They should be
Mm-hmm.
all over, and we have them here. God have put them here, and
Right.
but for man has limited what people can do outside of the uh, uh, the hierarchy of the church, so to speak. And if I remember correctly, and this is what got me going on my way, is that God says, "You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you to go forth
Mm,
gospel." And I didn't see in there where it said you need to be licensed. I didn't see where you need to be ordained. I didn't see where you needed to come from a certain denomination. And so with that, I took God at face value for what he said and I launched forth. And
mm.
because a result of experience.
Wow. So, Mr. Coleman, so your book is called Confessions of a Church Storefront. Am I
Storefront.
correct? Okay. And I'm going to put available. I'm just going to create a little banner here on Amazon. Do you have a website?
Yes, I have one that's being created presently.
Okay. All right. No problem. So yes, one of our audience here, Valerie, she wanted to know the name of your book. Hi Valerie, thank you for watching. So wow, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing and being transparent because this is a subject that we don't hear a lot about. Like I don't hear about people that have started a church or they try to and what they go through, whether they start in their homes or what that looks like. And so I think that it's very transparent for you to share that with people so at least they can know what they're getting into. They can plan and prepare if this is something that they've been called to do. But again, like you said, there's a lot of barriers that have been put into place to you know I guess certify certain people to be ministers and I think that's a great area to your point because that's not what that's about. And there's people that can speak every language, every type of slang or whatever, and that's so that you can reach those people where they are,
Yes.
and so that they don't feel that, oh, I don't, they don't, may not have an education, but they understand what you're saying, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Wow. This is awesome. Wow. Well, any closing remarks before we sign off today?
Yes. My closing remark is that my hope is that the message of the book will get out to the world,
Yes.
because the world, there are people out there that has been empowered by God to make a change and to make a difference. But as we follow the status quo and the staleness that is happening in our churches, as far as a number of things, the numbers are getting less, and putting
Yeah.
in good preachers, because a lot of them have just pretty much packed up and says, I'm out of here. It's too much work. It's too much hard. No, I can't do this. And we have 50,000 other people out here that's raring to go, but they can't, because
Mm,
told they had to follow a certain protocol. And the
mm,
protocol that I understand that God says, He says, go. He said, go. And
mm-hmm.
this is the book where when I went, despite what people said, I went according to what God said. And these are some of the things that I experienced in the book. So please, if you can, grab a book, The Confessions of a Storefront Church. Uh, and I think it'll
Yes.
help quite a few things.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Coleman, for sharing your story, for talking about your wonderful book. And being transparent. And thank you for being on the Authors Lounge. We appreciate you. We welcome you to come back when you have your next project. And also, just to let you know that Mr. Coleman is in BWA magazine for the month of September. It's on sale on Amazon. You can read about him in that edition, which you can see on the top screen. That is the this month's edition. So go ahead and grab his book, Confessions of a Church Storefront. It is storefront. It's on Amazon, and where books are sold. Check it out. So, you guys, we will see you next time on the Authors Lounge. We thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
Okay.